Understanding identity is important. Identity is an attribute of the individual ego when the consciousness, awareness, chitta, Atman takes up a prana with the Panch Mahabhut body. So, identity is what the awareness hides under or over, if you will, because it's a creation of a superficial mantle over the Karan Sharir in the form of Sukshma Sharir and sometimes as the Sthul Sharir or the gross body. So identity is whatever you take up and it is concealing your inner truth, inner reality of existence, which is Sat, Chit, Anand. So identity in that regard is a Tamasic belief that has been totally ingrained in our Sthul Sharir and Sukshma Sharir. Sthul Sharir forming the Panch Mahabhut body and the Sukshma Sharir forming the Manas, Buddhi, Ahamkara. And of course, gluing together the Sukshma Sharir with the Sthul Sharir is the Prana, which is the life-giving force combining the pace with the maker, or the pacemaker, if you will. Prana is the pacemaker. Just like the pacemaker of the heart causing heartbeats, prana creates the vital biological life in the form of movement of Vata or air. So, once I have described identity as a Tamasic belief, you know there is something wrong with it being Tamasic. It is deeply entrenched, tries to be very sticky. But also remember that it is Tamasic and one of the gunas. And gunas form Prakriti. And Prakriti is ever changing and evolving. So identity, just if you want to supplant it with the word nature, totally fine. Identity is nature. But nature itself is evolving, constantly changing. Whatever is not permanent will be constantly changing. Whatever is unmanifest will remain still, like Atman. So Prakriti and identity are constantly changing. Hence, personalities become individual caricatures of themselves as they grow older. What does that mean? It means a caricature is a hyper-pronounced feature of the baseline characteristics that individual has. So if they were a little desirous, over 10 years of life, they become extremely greedy. If they had minor temper tantrums, over 10 years, they become extremely irascible, easily angered, tempestuous. So, there is amplification of the characteristics under the realm of identity. Hence, a wise man is always careful about what attributes he will allow himself to identify with. Some identity, as Ramakrishna says, is always required to keep the vital forces of prana sticking with the chitta in the Panch Mahabhut. So we have to identify with something. This identity is what gives us the purpose. But we have to be very careful that identity is a tamasic force, and purpose we are trying to generate can be tamasic, rajasic or sattvic. More we have to try to create balance in our purposes, balance in our day-to-day activities, so that we can attain the goal of Satwa. Because Satwa, being the lightest and the best guna for growth of the spiritual body and the individual, is what is closest to Gunatit. Gunatit is the state where you are beyond the gunas. So tamas is the place where the gunas become extremely sticky and you become ingrained, entrenched in your beliefs, practices, or whatever you deem to be your purpose, versus Satwa maintains the balance between the various forces, various purposes, or even identities that we uptake, and hence it keeps it very light so that easily individual can break away from their original expected anticipated identity to be merging into the subconscious supreme consciousness or the paramchit. So why is that important? Because when you are so light and you are easily able to submerge into the consciousness of Paramchitta, you have become the ocean. As long as you try to remain sequestered away from the divine consciousness, away from the Paramchit, Param Paramatma, Param Purush, then you are going to be more ingrained in this karma. You are going to be more ingrained in karma bandhan requiring punarjanam, reincarnations. So, my friends, remember that identity is whatever we believe we are born with or we are destined to be doing. Some of the identity comes from your subconscious samskaras, which are going to be reflected in your current birth. So, being a man, being fair or dark skinned, being tall or short, all those what we call immodifiable risk factors, those are basically representing your past samskaras, now bringing in karma bandhan, which has been manifested in your current body. So that is your so-called non-modifiable risk factor or karma bandhan based identity. Now you come in contact with this world. You come in contact with the gunas, influencing associations, different kinds of people and experiences. And that shapes your mind to take up certain characters with which, or values if you will, if you are very woke about racial injustices, or if you're very compassionate about something. So whatever be the trait, you deeply identify with, and that is the continuation. And that is what gunas create. So identity has two components. One component from your past performances based on samskaras coming back as karma bandhan, what you are kind of displaying through the unfolding of the karma. And the second is through gunas, what you are going to build up, because vrittis are what are going to be converted into samskaras. So although you cannot control the karma bandhan that has already been accumulated in your past lives, you still have a strong control about what you are going to do about the experiences and individuals that you are allowing in your life. Because both those things, the past samskara based karma bandhans and present guna based influencing associations, will determine your identity. Identity is always false because identity is a representation of the ego. It is a requirement to remain in this biological life so that we can gain the experiences, which is why the chitta came in this world of prana. But identity has to be constantly uplifted so that it doesn't fall into the tamasic trench, or the place where it will be deeply ingrained and making us caricatures of our own personalities over time, because that itself is more going to be creating karma bandhan for us in our future life. So we have to break the samskara, break the karma bandhan, so that we can become more sattvic, and that way we can become gunatit, and hence break the trap of identity, and there will be less regrets when you are growing old, less regrets when you are close to dying about things you did not do, because you always remained in the mode of balance, satwa, goodness. So my friends, in short, remember that identity is a reflection of the ego. Ego is part of the Sukshma Sharir. Sukshma Sharir is not you. Hence, ego is not you. The identity, whether you're a doctor, engineer, boy, girl, all these things, or even for that matter, the gender identity disorders that arise, are because of the conflicting evidence that are being provided by the mind and the ego. So identity is not you. Identity is created by the interplay of the ego, intellect, and the mind. Identity is a tamasic belief. Hence, it gets deeply entrenched. People become caricatures of their present personalities because of this perceived identity. Because identity is what gives us a purpose. The purpose can be tamasic and people can become deeply entrenched in what they are doing, or it can be rajasic to create a certain rocky change, or it can be sattvic to maintain a balance, most likely between dharma, arth, kam, and moksha, the four pillars of life. Try to keep your identity light. Try to keep your identity balanced. Remember that identity is not truly what you are, because you are basically a raindrop that has been separated from the ocean. So the moment you lose your identity, you are allowed to be falling back into the ocean and experience the bliss of the expansiveness that is the ocean, because that is how the individual consciousness can be submerged using samadhi into the paramchitta, into the ocean of consciousness of divinity, and hence enjoy perpetual peace. Jai Shri Ram.